built to win. Applied myself, I filled it in. No time for the doubt, they counted me out, I'm getting it in. Yeah. No time for no loss, I'm paying the cost, I'm in it to win. Yeah. Refuse. Mine, it can't be diffused. If you ain't thinking the same, then we playing by different rules. You can't see the vision, we living at different views. Until we complete the mission, keep getting up, never snooze. I walked a mile in my shoes, had the mind of a fool, chasing diamonds and jewels. Trust me, I was confused. Started minding my business and used my mind as a tool. Ended up finding my purpose and found the time to get to it. They told me I couldn't do it, they told me I couldn't make it. They sold it, could never break it. That's sadly mistaken. I need a piece of the pie, I want it so bad I can taste it. They told me like Toby, keep on running toes, they gon' take a few to lose. Built to win, applied myself, I filled it in. No time for the doubt, they counted me out, I'm getting it in. Yeah. No time for no loss, I pay for the cost, I'm winning to win. Yeah. Refuse to lose, I'm built to win. Applied myself, I filled it in. No time for the doubt, they counted me out, I'm getting it in. Yeah. No time for no loss, I'm paying the cost, I'm in it to win. Yeah. Refuse.
Welcome back to CTC. I'm your gracious host, Carl, and I'm back for another episode. Today, we're going to be reviewing my SEC schedule previews for last season. A couple of announcements before I start. So I know Ace was a part of this. He's just busy, got a lot of stuff on his plate. Again, family of the show, but he'll be back soon. Right now, we do have another announcement. He won't be here for his 10 teams to review, but we do have a confirmed date for the ACC preview. The ACC preview and all previews will start July 24th. So starting July 24th, we will be going over the schedules for each team in Power 4 conferences in the upcoming season. And so far, I will be the only one giving you 10 teams to look out for, but that's just so far. Things may change, but that's just the current update as we speak. Also, with this, my coaching carousel previews and reviews will be this and next week. Sunday will be reviewing my Power 4 coaching carousel, so new coaches that was hired last year. And then coaching carousels will also, it'll just carry on stuff like that. But that should be all the announcements. Oh, one last announcement. It's not really an announcement, but our previews this year will feature a small twist. We will be introducing gambling win totals. So for example, if I had Oregon going 12-0. If the win total for Oregon was over under 10.5, I would say take the over, and I will track that as the season progresses. So at the end of next year, we'll go back, see if my win total matched the books win total for said team. So that's just a small adjustment in CTC coming up for next year's previews. Now to introduce the shows that we have on the network, because this is a network. We have my show, like you're watching CTC. We have the main show featuring Joe, Tomo, and Dave every Tuesday and Friday. No show today because it is 4th of July, but every Tuesday and Friday between 7 to 8:30ish. We have Unfazed every Tuesday. I think they're going back to Tuesdays now. 9 to 10:30ish, 8 to 9:30 ish for Central Time viewers. AJ is Central Time. We have Dave's Doghouse, highlights and lowlights of sport. We have BWT, Baseball with Teddy. Your baseball needs through there. My Tigers just lost to the Nationals 2-1, but the Nationals still suck. So, hey, we're still 20 games above 500, and they're still in poverty. So it's all good. By the way, I looked this up. They have yet to play against Schoolball, which is absolutely insane. Schoolball has yet to play against the Nationals when he's on the Tigers. So that was crazy. But I digress. We have RBO, Real Balls Only, featuring Vaughn. NBA content. So make sure y'all be on the lookout for that. Summer League starts Saturday. Maybe he might talk about the Summer League. Maybe he won't. I don't know. We have In the Red Corner, featuring Tyreek and Tomo boxing episode. I know we're getting that much closer to Lamont Roach versus Tank, the rematch. So be on the lookout for them. And I believe that's all the shows. FFC. Well, I'm missing FFC. Fantasy Football with Coach Coombs, which we are in July. So training camps start this month. So be on the lookout for FFC and who you should be drafting and where. Fantasy football is around the corner, and that is all the shows we have on the network. So please like, comment, share, subscribe to all the channels on the network as well. And if you like what you're listening to, stick with us. Now let's get straight into the SEC. Now I will say this before we start. I think the SEC might have been my best conference. Might have been my best conference in terms of predictions. I did really well. Now, also, spoiler alert, I gotta apologize to Vanderbilt. Completely off on Vanderbilt's schedule. Prediction. Didn't have them making a bowl game. They actually made a bowl game. I won't say what I had them and what they actually went because I'll save that for their section. But I will jump out and apologize early to Vandy. But now let's get into the first team, Alabama. Alabama exits the Nick Saban era and they enter the Kalen DeBoer era. Hold on. I don't. Something popped up, but I don't think that's going to do anything with my stream. Okay, cool. They entered the Kalen DeBoer era. Oh, hold on. Shout out my boy Joe for reposting the stream. But yeah, we move on to Alabama. Now Alabama, they lost a lot. They did keep Jalen Milroe. They did have incoming freshman Ryan Williams, who had a pretty decent year. He had a really big game against Georgia. But other than that, pretty solid year for a freshman. But a lot of questions. And they lost Caleb Downs. Can't forget about that. That was huge. They lost Caleb Downs to Ohio State. That was probably the hugest loss. But a lot of questions. Yeah, they get Jeremy Bernard, but how's the team going to look offensively? What are they going to do? Are they going to keep that swagger that Nick Saban had? Are they going to be that gritty, grimy team? And I'm not going to lie, Alabama, it did look rocky this year. They did have some uncharacteristic things happen on the field, undisciplined plays, busted coverages, stuff like that. It did look a little crazy in DeBoer's first year. Now I had Alabama going 10-2, 7-2. They actually went 9-3, 5-3. They did lose the Reliant Quest Bowl to Michigan. So again, second straight year losing a bowl game to Michigan. They lost the Rose Bowl, which was a college football playoff bowl, to Michigan the year before on the way, which was like the national semis because it was only 4 teams. But I got 7 games right, 5 games wrong. I predicted they would beat Western Kentucky. They did that. I predicted them to beat South Florida. They won. I had them beating Wisconsin. They won. I had them losing to Georgia. They actually won. And if you remember, Georgia was down early, came back, but Ryan Williams had that huge go ball to go back up. And they prevented Georgia from completing the comeback. I had them beating Vandy. They got upset. This was one of those games where a lot of uncharacteristic, undisciplined plays happened for Alabama, and it started to, it started the we miss Nick Saban cries of Alabama. I had them beating South Carolina. They won. I had them beating Tennessee. They actually lost 24-17, and this was another uncharacteristic game. In the second half, I believe offensively, it was just bad for Alabama. I had them losing to Mizzou. Excuse me. They won 34-0. I had them beating LSU. They won. I had them beating Mercer. They won. Now, this game was insane. I cannot believe this happened. I had them beating Oklahoma, and Oklahoma down 6 receivers, going through a whole bunch of quarterback changes. OC wasn't trusted, and they beat Oklahoma. I mean, they lose to Oklahoma 24-3. Didn't even get a touchdown in this game. This game was so bad for Bama. And then they win the Iron Bowl against Auburn. So they go 9-3, 5-3, like I said, losing the Reliant Quest Bowl. Just all in all, like for Bama, this isn't a good season because there were 12 teams in the playoffs and they didn't make the playoffs. Normally, when you think of Bama in a 12-team setting for a playoff, you think Bama's a top seed. They're for sure in. And for them not to make a playoff as Bama, didn't even make the SEC championship game, that's just not a good season if you're Bama. 9 wins is cool and other programs, but for Bama, it's not good. So as much as 9-3, 5, and then they lose the bowl game on top of that to a Michigan team who was not good. They were really good defensively, can run the ball, but just one-dimensional. They were just really grounded, pound, and playing defense. They were one-dimensional. And for you to lose to that, it's not good. So all in all, in my opinion, Bama did not have a good year. Next, we're going to move on to Arkansas. They lose KJ Jefferson to UCF, excuse me. But they bring in Taylor Green from Boise State, a guy who was very fast, really fast runner at quarterback. They bring in Jaquindon Jackson. They lose Rocket Sanders in South Carolina. But like I said, Jaquindon Jackson, Andrew Armstrong comes back, Isaac Tesla comes back. They're looking to be trying for a decent year, and they had a decent year. Me personally, I didn't have them making a bowl game. I had them going 4-8, 1-7. They went 6-6, 3-5, so I wasn't too far, but they did make a bowl game. I also got 10 games right of the season, 2 games wrong. So the only 2 games I got wrong was I had them losing to Auburn, and they won 24-14. And I had them losing to Tennessee, and they actually won a night game at home, 19-14. That game was kind of crazy. So those are the only 2 games I got wrong. So swap those. Then if you swap those for L's, then my season predictions right. But you didn't. So again, I had them beating Arkansas Pine Bluff. They won. I had them losing to Oklahoma State. That was a game they should have won, but lost. They just found ways to lose that game. Point blank, period. It's just that simple. Had them beating UAB. They won. I had them, again, losing to Auburn. They won. Had them losing to Texas A&M. They lost. I had them losing to Tennessee. They won. I had them losing to LSU. They lost. Had them beating Mississippi State. They won. I had them losing to Ole Miss. They lost. I had them losing to Texas. They lost. I had them beating Louisiana Tech. They won. Had them losing to Mizzou. They lost. Overall, again, they went 6-6, 3-5. They did win the Liberty Bowl against Texas Tech 39-26, which I think that game, the score doesn't indicate how dominant Arkansas was in that game. Texas Tech literally could not stop Arkansas on third downs. They could not get their offense off the field. Taylor Green was running wild on Texas Tech. Arkansas's offense did whatever they wanted to Texas Tech, if I'm being completely honest. They dominated that game. They got 10 games right, 2 games wrong. So really good. I would say I did a pretty good job predicting it. I mean, hey, just 2 L's turned to W's, and that was the difference in making a bowl game or not. But they're looking to build off of this year into the next season. But I would say overall, pretty solid season for Arkansas. You couldn't really ask for too much more. They won games they were supposed to win. I think they won games they weren't supposed to win, and they lost the games they were supposed to lose. So all in all, pretty good year. Okay, I need this to stop. All right, next we're going to Auburn. Auburn was coming off a 6-6, 3-5 year. So my issue with Auburn going into the season was at quarterback, which was an issue this year. Peyton Thorne, as an MSU fan, I figured he wasn't it. Sorry, not sorry. But they did have a really good, talented freshman at receiver. I'm blanking on his name right now. I think it was Cam Coleman, I think. And he did pretty solid as a freshman receiver. Can't lie, he did pretty solid. But I had a lot of issues with Auburn's offense. I didn't know what the offense was going to look like. I did like Jaquiz Hunter at running back, him returning. I thought he would be a major piece, but I felt like teams were going to load the box against him because they didn't really fear the passing game of Auburn, which was basically true. I know they tried to open up the passing game for Auburn, but they just did not have the quarterbacks to do so, in my opinion. So Auburn, I had them going 7-5, 3-5, which is solid for what Auburn has been of late. Not solid of Auburn of yesteryear, but of what they've been late. That's a solid season. They actually went 5-7, 2-6. So a down year, not making a bowl game at Auburn. It's pretty bad. I think they had Hugh Freeze as their head coach. So you would want more, but it's just not a good season. I think it was mainly due to the offense, to be completely honest. I had 8 games right, 4 games wrong. I had them beating Alabama A&M. They won. I had them beating Cal. They actually lost that game to Cal, 21-14. I remember like midway in that game, it was like a turnover fest. I had them beating New Mexico. They won. Had them beating Arkansas. They lost 24-14. I had them losing to Oklahoma, Georgia, Mizzou. They actually lost all 3 of those games. Had them beating Kentucky. They won. I had them beating Vandy. They lost 17-7. Had them beating UL Monroe. They won. I had them losing to Texas A&M. They actually won this game in 4 overtimes. That game was actually crazy. Texas A&M defensively just could not stop Auburn for whatever reason. I remember that game thinking, like, why can't they stop this offense? And then they lost to Iron Bowl, like I said previously, to Alabama. Again, going 5-7, 2-6, and missing a bowl game. So not a good year for Auburn. Whenever you miss a bowl game as an SEC school, unless you're like Vandy, it's not a good year. So got a lot to clean up this year if they want to have a better year. Next, we go to one of my more proud predictions in the SEC. The Florida Gators. Now, the Florida Gators, they do bring back Graham Mertz, excuse me. They bring back Graham Mertz, but in comes highly touted freshman DJ Lagway, Billy Napier. His job is kind of on the line. It still is kind of on the line, if we're being honest. But the biggest thing, besides losing Trevor Etienne, Ricky Pearsall, Princely Amenelin to Ole Miss, the biggest thing was this was supposed to be one of the hardest schedules, if not ever. A lot of Florida fans were saying this was like the hardest schedule ever, if not ever a top 5 hardest schedule ever. And to a degree, I'm with it because you do play Miami, who could have made a playoff. They just somehow keep losing to Georgia Tech. It's just crazy. And they lost again to Syracuse. Even with losing to Georgia Tech, they beat Syracuse and possibly make the ACC. I think they do make the ACC championship game. Yeah, they would have made the ACC championship game if they'd have beat Syracuse. And then they could have beat Clemson, honestly. I think they could have beat Clemson. But yeah, that was a possible playoff team. You play LSU, you play Ole Miss, you play Tennessee, you play Georgia, you play Texas, you play all these big teams. It was a tough schedule. It was for sure. Tennessee made the playoffs. Georgia made the semis, I believe. Texas made the semis because Georgia didn't make the semis. Georgia lost in the quarterfinals. They lost to Notre Dame. But Texas lost in the semis to Ohio State. Ole Miss is a really good team. LSU is a really good team. Texas A&M was solid defensively. So, yeah, it was a tough schedule. And I predicted their record. I didn't predict their season perfectly because I got 2 games wrong. But I predicted Florida to go 7-5, 4-4. Florida went 7-5, 4-4. So with all the mess about the schedule and how hard it was to predict their record correctly, I felt good about that. I really did. I wish I'd have got the 2 games right so I could have a perfect prediction. But hey, I got the record right. I'll take that. So we'll hop right into it. Miami. By the way, excuse me before I do that. I do want to say prayers up to Graham Mertz. He did get hurt in the season, which led DJ Lagway to play the rest of the year. And he actually played really well. He looked like the guy that everybody thinks he is. So I'm excited to see what DJ does this coming season. But against Miami, the Hurricanes, I had them losing. They lost. I had them beating Sanford. They won. I had them losing to Texas A&M. They lost. I had them beating Mississippi State. They won. I had them beating UCF. They won. I had them beating Tennessee. They lost. I had them beating Kentucky. They won. I had them losing to Georgia, they lost. I had them losing to Texas, they lost. I had them beating LSU, they won. I had them losing to Ole Miss, they won actually 24-17. And I had them beating Florida State, which they won. Again, going 7-5, 4-4, which I predicted. I had 10 games right, 2 games wrong, and they dominated Tulane in the Gasparilla Bowl, 33-8. Now, granted, Tulane was without Darian Mensah, who transferred to Duke like immediately after that season. He was like on campus at a game like the next day or something like that. But yeah, I was most proud of this Florida prediction, especially with all the hype around how hard the schedule was to get the record and the SEC and their overall record correct. Felt good. Felt really good. I'm excited to see how Florida looks next year. I am a huge Billy Napier fan. I know I'm saying all this wearing a South Carolina shirt. I actually despise Florida, but I don't show no bias on my show. So I'm excited to see what Florida does next season. But we're going to move on to Georgia, who was – I believe no. They were not your reigning SEC champs because they lost to Alabama. And that's why they were crying about how they didn't make the playoffs the season prior. Alabama was the reigning champs, SEC champs. But Georgia was coming off a 12-0, 8-0 season. Georgia, Kirby Smart, they bring in Trevor Etienne. They have a lot of people reload, and they bring in Ben Voracek from Stanford, I was a huge fan of. They returned Michael Williams, Jalen Walker. It's like, oh, man. I mean, even me, I thought they were national championship bound. They lose in the quarterfinals of the CFP. Now, granted, Carson Beck did get hurt, and Gunnar Stockton did have to take over, and I don't think he was ready for the moment. But, man, it was looking like a promising year for Georgia. It really was. But I had Georgia going 11-1, 7-1. The only loss being Texas. They went 10-2, 6-2. So I had them beating Clemson. They won. I think destroyed Clemson, if I'm not mistaken. I had them beating Tennessee Tech. They won. I had them beating Kentucky. They won. I had them beating Bama. That's the game they lost. I had them beating Auburn. They won. I had them beating Mississippi State. They won. I had them losing to Texas. They won 30-15. I had them beating Florida. They won. I had them beating Ole Miss. They lost 28-10. And in that game, that really showed me a lot about Carson Beck and how bad he played. He played really bad. He really couldn't move the ball down the field. Ole Miss was just affecting him in the backfield. He looked lost. It was bad for him that game. I think the running game was the reason why they scored their only touchdown. I think it was Nate Frazier, who had a lot of yards on their drive to score the touchdown. But I had them beating Tennessee. They won. I had them beating UMass. They won. And I had them beating Georgia Tech, which they won that game. But that was like 7-8 overtimes. That game was insane. I think that game lasted like 4 or 5 hours. It was a hell of a game by both programs. But Georgia ended up squeaking out the dub. Again, I got 9 games right, 3 games wrong. They won the SEC championship game despite losing Carson Beck against Texas 22-19 in overtime. But then they lose the Sugar Bowl to Notre Dame 23-10. So that was where their season ended. But they are back on top of the SEC. So they did do that. So that was good for them. Although I say all in all, this was a good season for Georgia because you might be thinking like, Carl, they didn't win the Natty, they didn't make the Natty, they didn't even make the semis. How's it a good season? They lost their quarterback. And as much as Gunnar Stockton is supposed to be the future, one, I don't really see Georgia hit on a lot of quarterbacks. That's just me. Like Stetson Bennett was a walk-on who got them that 2 natties. What was that? Matt Stafford went to Georgia, but that was ages ago. You got Aaron Murray. He was cool. But other than that, I really can't name another Georgia quarterback before like DJ Shockey. And that was ages. That was before Matthew Stafford. So I don't really see Georgia being like a quarterback factory. So when you lose Carson Beck, who I'm not really that high on anyway, and to still win the SEC against Texas, who was a pretty good team, you were still competitive against Notre Dame. And I think special teams lost them that game, to be honest, if I remember correctly. So I still think it's a good season for Georgia. I think it was still a good season. And it might be even better next year. You got a whole year under your belt. Georgia's pretty pissed about losing in the first round. They got a chip on their shoulder, so it's interesting to see what Georgia looks like with a chip on their shoulder, even though they claim they had one this year too. So, I guess that'd be back-to-back years. But at least this one wasn't. No, I don't know. But I'm still excited to see what Georgia does. And I want to see what Georgia looks like at quarterback because Carson Beck's gone. And so let's see. But we'll move on to Kentucky. Another team where I got their record predicted correctly, but it wasn't a perfect season because I didn't predict every game correctly. So Kentucky, they were coming off a 75-3-5 season, pretty solid year for Kentucky. Anytime Kentucky football makes a bowl game, you take your hat off. That's a good season. But this year, however, they did not make a bowl game. They went 4-8, 1-7, like I predicted. And I figured it was going to be a bad year when I saw the quarterback they brought in. They brought in the guy, Gavin Wimsatt from Rutgers. And I was like, I'm not a fan. I haven't been a fan of the last 3 quarterbacks they brought in. I wasn't a fan of Devin Leary. I wasn't a fan of Will Levis. And I wasn't a fan of Gavin Wimsatt. And they just all seem like the same type of quarterback to me. Guys who can run, they have strong arms, but they're not very accurate. And Brock Vandagriff was cool, another guy that can run, but not very accurate. So I don't know. Kentucky has a type at quarterback, and they need to fix it. They need to get away from it. They need to like a different style of quarterback, in my opinion. And I think that's what ultimately cost them this year because you bring back guys like Barian Brown and Dane Key at receiver, 630 yards or 540 yards for between them, well, for both of them. You bring back some guys. Your defense is always going to be solid for Kentucky. You're always going to have a solid defense there. I know you lost Ray Davis at running back, which that was a big loss. I'm not gonna lie, that was a big loss. But you bring in Chip Trainium from Ohio State, so that'd have been huge. It's just quarterback play. It hurt Kentucky. I had Kentucky beating Southern Miss, they won. I had them losing to South Carolina, they lost. Had them losing to Georgia, they lost. Had them beating Ohio, they won. Had them losing to Ole Miss. Now this game, Ole Miss lost the game. Man, I just remember every time Ole Miss had a chance, turnover, something would happen, and Kentucky would take advantage. I had them beating Vandy, they lost. I had them losing to Florida, they lost. I had them losing to Auburn, they lost. I had them losing to Tennessee, they lost. I had them beating Murray State, they won. And I had them losing to Texas and Louisville, which they lost both games, going 4-8, 1-7. And I got 10 games right, 2 games wrong. So, yeah, man. In terms of the SEC, man, I think this was again one of my better conferences of predictions. But we're gonna move on to LSU. LSU brings Garrett Nussmeier after the Jaden Daniels era, because Jaden Daniels became the number 2 overall pick in the draft. They bring back Kyron Lacey, RIP. They bring in some talent. They got Xavier Thomas. They bring back Mason Taylor at tight end, who y'all know was one of my favorite tight ends in the country. They lost Malik Neighbors, they lost Brian Thomas, but again, they had some talent at wide receiver. They bring back Harold Perkins, who I believe got hurt, and I think he's coming back. So shout out to him. But and they brought over CJ Daniels from Liberty. Forgot about that. They did bring over CJ Daniels from Liberty, so shout out to him as well. I thought it would be a pretty good year for LSU. I knew that I knew they wouldn't be cream of the crop. I knew they wouldn't be the top of the top, but I thought they would be decent. I thought they'd be pretty solid as an SEC school. A question was at running back, which I feel like Caden Durham, the freshman, answered that question for them, which is cool because he's a freshman, going to be a sophomore this year, and so he at least got 2 to 3 more years with the program. If if he decides to stay, because it is the transfer portal NIL era, so people have great seasons and leave even in LSU or Alabama, so that still remains possible. But defensively was what I questioned with LSU. LSU, very high-powered offense last season. Well, not last season, the season with Jaden Daniels, the year he won the Heisman. But they didn't even make the playoffs. They didn't make the SEC championship game. And the reason for that was because defensively, they let teams match what Jaden Daniels was doing. Jaden Daniels had 50 touchdowns and went 9-3 because they could not stop teams from scoring on them. So that was my biggest issue coming into the season for LSU. I had LSU going 8-4, 4-4. They went 8-4, 5-3. So I got their overall record correct. They did win the Texas Bowl versus a hot Baylor team. Baylor came in scorching hot, and LSU was able to win that game. The score was 44-31. I had them beating USC in the first game of the season in Vegas. They actually lost that game. I had them beating Nichols, they won. Had them beating South Carolina, they won. They shouldn't have won that game. That was a pick 6. I forgot. I think they called like a block in the back or something on the Nick Omeroy pick 6. I remember just being a fraudulent call. Should have won that game. Lenore Sellers did get hurt in that game and did not return. I forgot who was at quarterback once he left, but yeah, they won. Shout out to them. They shouldn't have won, but shout out to them. UCLA, I had them winning, they won. I had them beating South Alabama, they won. I had them losing to Ole Miss. They actually won in overtime. I believe Kyron Lacey caught the game with a touchdown pass in that game. I had them beating Arkansas, they won. I had them losing to Texas A&M, they lost. I had them losing to Bama, they lost. I had them losing to Florida, they lost. I had them beating Vandy, they won, and I had them beating Oklahoma, in which they won. Again, to go 8-4, 4-4. I got 8-4, 5-3. Excuse me. I had 10 games right, 2 games wrong. So I think overall that was a pretty good year for LSU. Pretty good year. Now defensively, I don't think they were as bad as the year they were with Jaden Daniels, but I don't think they were a good defense either. I think there was like an average defense, average college football defense, but it couldn't have been any worse than the year with Jaden Daniels, his second season there, his last season there. But we're gonna move on now to Mississippi State, Jeff Levy's first year. And boy, what a first year it was. And I don't mean that in a good way. Mississippi State, man, they did worse than I predicted. And I predicted a bad season. I predicted them to go 4-8, 0-8 in conference play. They went 2-10, 0-8 in conference play. So I got the conference record correct. They did not win an SEC game at all, but they did drop 2 games. Now, one game, I didn't think that team was going to be as good as they were. And another game, I just thought SEC group of 5, they'll find a way to just win it off pure talent and trenches. But they got blown out. But I don't have to say too much about this year. Bad season all the way around. Losing Will Rogers did hurt a ton. Quarterback play was not great. And not a lot was great for Mississippi State. Jeff Levy has a lot of work to do in the SEC with Mississippi State being behind the 8 ball so crazy. Um, Good luck to him though, and we'll start. I had them beating Eastern Kentucky. They won. I had them beating Arizona State because I did not think Arizona State was going to be as good as they were, and they lost 30-23. I had them beating Toledo. They lost 41-17. I had them losing to Florida, Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Arkansas, which they lost all those games. And their saving grace to get a W, I had them beating UMass, which they won. Then I had them losing to Tennessee, Mizzou, and Ole Miss, which they lost all three to go 2-10, 0-8. I got 10 games right, 2 games wrong. Again, just a bad season for Mississippi State as they try to turn it around a little bit this upcoming season. Now we're going to move on to the University of Missouri. Mizzou was coming off a 10-2 year where they beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. So that's a New Year's Six Bowl win under their belt. Pretty great season. Now, they did bring back Brady Cook. They did bring back Luther Burden and Theo Weiss, but they did lose Cody Schrader, who was one of the top walk-ons in the country at running back. So that was huge. They did lose Enos Rankstraw to the Lions. That was huge. But all in all, I thought they would be a great team. They got a lot of their production from the offense back. They did get Nate Noel and Marcus. I'm blanking on his name from Georgia State, the running back. And it might not be Marcus. I'm blanking on his name. Let me see if I got it right here. Marcus Carroll. They did bring in 2 Group of 5 running backs who I really liked in the Group of 5 level. So I thought they'd be able to replace their production, if not by committee, by figuring out who was going to be the top dog. But it ended up being by committee, in my opinion. I had them going 10-2, 6-2. They went 9-3, 5-3. The only game I got wrong, which I'll take it because I was happy, was the South Carolina game. That's the only game I got wrong in this season. I predicted them to beat South Carolina. They lost. South Carolina won off a last-minute touchdown. I know Nick Harbor scored one. I want to say Jaheim Bell scored the game winner. I want to say the tight end. But yeah, we'll start Murray State. I had them beat Murray State. They won. I had them beating Buffalo. They won. I had them beating Boston College. They won. I had them beating Vandy. They won. I had them losing to Texas A&M. They lost. I had them beating UMass. They won. I had them beating Auburn. They won. I had them losing to Alabama. They lost. I had them beating Oklahoma. They won. I had them beating South Carolina. They lost 34-30. I had them beating Mississippi State. They won. And I had them beating Arkansas in their rivalry game. And they won. Again, going 9-3, 5-3. I got 11 games right, 1 game wrong, and they did win the Music City Bowl, against Iowa, 27-24. I would say this is a good season for Mizzou. Stacking back-to-back 10-win seasons because they got the bowl win, so that's 10 wins. That's great for Missouri, to be honest. Missouri is normally a middle-of-the-pack SEC school. Anywhere between 6 to 8 wins is pretty big for them. Now, I mean, you're going to go back to Chase Daniel, Jeremy Macklin. That was outlier. You can go back to, what was that, Matty Malk and I forgot the other quarterback when Mizzou won the SEC East. I think that was like 2013. It was Matty Malk. Oh, Drew Lock. I think it was Matty Malk and Drew Lock. That was cool, but those are like outlier years. So to stack back-to-back 10-win seasons, I think that was really huge for Missouri and trying to establish a program and a foundation. So I think this is a great year for the Tigers of Missouri. Now we're going to move on to Oklahoma. First year in the SEC. Brett Venables, they think they can play with the SEC, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie, they had a stroke of bad luck this year. That just is what it is. I think the OC unjustly got fired, in my opinion, at the end of this year. When you're down 6 receivers and they're being your top receivers, it's kind of hard to do anything. Now I get it, you recruit a lot of guys in college, but bro, they're starters for a reason, and you lose 6 of them. That's insane. I felt like he should have got some grace. You were mixing in a freshman quarterback with this as well. You're in the SEC, the toughest conference with this. I felt he should have got some grace, but Oklahoma felt otherwise. It just is what it is. But I had Oklahoma going 7-5, 3-5, coming off a 10-2, 7-2 year. But again, that was in the Big 12. They went 6-6, 2-6. So I wasn't that far off. They had some great. They had a couple of great upset wins. Excuse me. I don't see any bad losses. Like, they lost to South Carolina, but that ended up not being a bad loss. Now, the score is a bad loss. 35-9 is a bad loss. But in terms of the team they lost to, that's not a bad loss. I don't see a team that they lost to where they was like, they shouldn't have lost this game. But I do see a W on this where they shouldn't have won that game. And that ended up being the reason why they made a bowl. So I had them beating Temple. They won. I had them beating Houston. They won. I had them beating Tulane. They won. I had them beating Tennessee. They actually lost. They lost 25-15, and that's when they started like changing quarterbacks mid game and stuff. They went from Jackson Arnold to Michael Hawkins. They were switching back and forth. I had them beating Auburn. They won. I had them losing to Texas. They lost, which is a rivalry game. That's not a bad loss. And Texas was a really good team. They only lost one. Oh, I'll talk about them. Damn, come up yet. My bad. South Carolina, I had them beating South Carolina. They lost 35-9. I had them losing to Ole Miss. They lost. I had them beating Maine. They won. I had them losing to Mizzou. They lost. I had them losing to Alabama. They won 24-3. And I had them losing to LSU, which they lost. So again, going 6-6, 2-6, 9 games right, 3 games wrong. They did lose in the Armed Forces Bowl 21-20 versus Navy. I felt like going against that triple option was kind of different for them, I would say. They don't really see it as much. Like, I know you can say, well, Carl, Notre Dame, they play Navy all the time. So, like, I think teams that don't go against the triple option as much, it can get tricky when you don't play against it. You have to be disciplined. You got to remain in your gaps. You can't try to play hero ball. You can't slice. You can't jump out of position because it's going to cost you. And they did give up a bunch of big plays in that game as well. But all in all, for the type of scenarios Oklahoma went through to make a bowl game, make a 6-6 in the SEC, I'm gonna count this as a good season. I am. I'll count this as a good season. When you have 2 young quarterbacks, you're having quarterback issues, let alone 6 receivers hurt. It's just tough. It's tough in the SEC, and to make a bowl game with all that, I think that's huge. So I'm gonna call it a good season. Next, we're gonna go on to Ole Miss. Now, warning: I was super high on Ole Miss. Why? Because I was super high on Jackson Dart. I am a huge Jackson Dart fan. I was a huge Jackson Dart fan in USC. I was wondering why he wasn't starting over Keaton Slovis. I've been a huge Jackson Dart fan for a couple years now. So they were coming off that 10-2 year where I perfectly predicted their season. I thought they would go 11-1. I know they lost Quishon Judkins, and that was huge, but I felt like bringing back Trey Harris and Watkins and with a Caden pre-scoring, I thought the offense they'll find a running back. I mean, it's Coach Kiffin. He's going to find offensive players. Defensively is another thing that can kind of concern me about Ole Miss. But defensively, I wouldn't say they were good, but I would think they were solid. I think they were pretty solid defensively. Again, bringing in Princely. Oh, they also brought in Juice Wells, but he got hurt. They brought in Chris Hardy from Jack State. I was excited for the year. Now, they didn't go 11-1. They did not do that. They actually went 9-3, 5-3, which is still a solid season. The only thing, though, with that is they lost the LSU game, which I thought they should have won, but it wasn't Baton Rouge, so I'll give them grace there. And losing the Florida game in the swamp, I'll kind of give them grace there because it was in the swamp, but I think they were the better team. The Kentucky game is where I can't go. You win that Kentucky game, you're possibly in the playoffs over Tennessee. I think they'll put them in over Tennessee. Tennessee, while really good defensively, offensively, were horrible. And you might be saying, Carl, how are they horrible offensively when they won the spoiler alert, SEC Offensive Player of the Year and Dylan Sampson? They just ran the ball. Nico Amaleva, you forced him. Oh, how you say his name? Excuse me. You force him to pass the ball, you win. And that was just my opinion on Tennessee last year. Nico, you force him to drop back past that ball, it's a wrap. It's over. You won. If you can't allow Tennessee to run the ball, dictate the pace of the game on the ground, mix in the pass here and there to keep you off your keep you honest, it's over. But if you force Nico to drop back and throw that ball to beat you, you won. And I think they see that. They say, oh, well, we got Jackson Dart, electric quarterback. He's going to throw the ball. You got all these receivers and Trey Harris. Again, Jordan Watkins, Caden pre-scoring. You got all these guys. And then, like, you compare the offenses, I think they'd have got Ole Miss in there over Tennessee. I'm sorry. But the Kentucky game done them in, and they didn't get in. And Duke caught the brunt of that in the Gator Bowl. They beat Duke in the Gator Bowl 20, excuse me. I got 8 games right, 4 games wrong for Ole Miss. I had them beating Furman. They won. I had them beating Middle Tennessee State. They won. I had them beating Wake Forest. They won. I had them beating Georgia Southern. They won. I had them beating Kentucky. They lost 20-17. I had them beating South Carolina. They won. I had them beating LSU. They lost 29-26 in overtime. I had them beating Oklahoma. They won. I had them beating Arkansas. They won. I had them losing to Georgia. They actually won 28-18. So I guess you could say that could kind of erase the Kentucky game, but not really. I had them beating Florida. They lost 24-17, and then they won the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State to go 9-3, 5-3. Again, I would say this is a solid season. 9 wins, 10 wins to the bowl game. I guess you could say that's a really good season, but again, they should have been a playoff team and they weren't. So that kind of takes it down for me, in my opinion, because Jackson Dart and Trey Harris came back to school to compete for a natty, and they could not compete for a natty. I will say, which was a W for Jackson Dart, is it jumped him into the first round. I don't think a lot of people would have picked him in the first round with Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May in that draft class. Maybe over JJ McCarthy. I would have took him over JJ McCarthy, but I'm talking about the majority. So that was one thing that helped him coming back. He got picked in the first round. But we'll move on to my South Carolina boys and Beamer Ball. Shane Beamer. I think a lot of people say this is like a make or break year for him. I would tend to agree. Like, I felt like if he didn't have a good season this year, he might have been put on a hot seat, but he did nonetheless. He took us to a bowl game, which I did have us going to a bowl game. We lost that bowl game to Illinois in the Citrus Bowl 21-17, and because the defense could not get a stop when we needed them to. But all in all, it's a great year. We lose Spencer Dinwiddie. My bad. We lose Spencer Rattler, excuse me. We lose Xavier Legette on the offensive end. But we bring Lenore Sellers, which apparently Juice Wells left because he didn't think we had a quarterback good enough for him to stay. Joke's on you. Lenore Sellers steps in and does a great job. Now, I didn't know what we were going to look like at quarterback. I'll be honest with you. Had no idea who Lenore Sellers was, how we was going to look. I was nervous. I really was. But Lenore Sellers came in and did an excellent job at quarterback. We did lose Trey Knox, tight end. He did go to the league. But like I said, we had guys step up. We did. We had Jared Brown from Coastal Carolina. Amari Huggins Bruce did come in. Then he went back to LSU. But we had I'm blanking out. Nick Harbor had a okay year. You would have went off NCAA, you would think Nick Harbor would have had 1,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. But he had an okay. I don't know how to qualify Nick Harbor's year because he had moments. I'll say that he had moments. Definitely had moments. I think with Jaheim Bell at tight end, Greg Larvadang. Well, I think did Larvadang stay? Yeah, Greg Larvadang from Miami of Ohio. Yeah, and Rocket Sanders at running back. So we just had a solid year offensively. I think 9-3, 5-3 was a hell of a year for South Carolina. We were coming off a 5-7, 3-5 year. I thought we would only go 6-6, 3-5, and we went 9-3, 5-3. So it was a hell of a year. I was more than I expected. I loved the season, winning games, and we beat Clemson to put the cherry on top. So that was huge, beating Clemson in my opinion. When you win that game, that's just huge. The battle of the Palmetto. When you win that game, I love it as a South Carolina fan. So we beat ODU. I had us winning. I had us beating Kentucky. We won. I had us losing to LSU. Again, we shouldn't have lost, but we lost. I had us beating Akron. We won. I had us losing to Ole Miss. We lost. I had us losing to Alabama. We lost. I think this is also a game we shouldn't have lost. We lost it. I think we lost that game late game. Yeah, we did. We lost this game in the late seconds. That was a game we should not have lost. We should have beat Bama, but we lost. I had us losing to Oklahoma. We won 35-9. I had us beating Texas A&M. We won. I had us beating Vandy. We won. I had us losing to Mizzou. We actually won 34-30 again in the late game. I had us beating Wofford. We won. I had us losing to Clemson, which we won 17-14. I had 9 games right, 3 games wrong. Again, we lost in the Citrus Bowl to Illinois 21-17. That sucked. But all in all, great year, South Carolina. The only thing I could have asked for was to actually win the bowl game, to be completely honest. That's the only other thing I could have asked for. Other than that, couldn't ask for anything else. Beat Clemson, 9-win season, made a bowl game. Just wish we would have won that. But it's all good. And we'll move on to Tennessee. Tennessee, coming off of I want to say they went 8-4, 4-4 season. Pretty solid. That was with Joe Milton. I know they had higher expectations with Joe Milton after what he did in that Orange Bowl against Clemson, but it just didn't pan out that way. It didn't. It just didn't. They brought back Squirrel White and Brew McCoy. They brought over Chris Brazil from Tulane. They had Dylan Sampson coming back in that backfield, who again won Player of the Year. So it was a lot on Nico's shoulders, and Nico had that 5 touchdown, albeit I think they were all rushing touchdown games against Iowa. So people were excited for Nico. He's a 5-star recruit at quarterback. I think he was number 1 or 2. It was either him or Arch, but it was a lot of expectation in Nico on this offense. And I ain't gonna lie, I think Dylan Sampson held up his end of the bargain. Receivers tried to hold up theirs. I don't think Nico held up his. I'm sorry. It might sound like I'm being harsh on the kid, but I'm just being honest. I am. You're a 5-star recruit. You pushed it with the NIL. Let's just be serious. You try to get them to overpay you. This is why I say I don't equate wins to just strictly quarterback, because not all wins are built equally. But now he's at UCLA, and good luck to the kid at UCLA, man. I hope you do well out there. I hope you help change that program, except when you play Michigan State. That's it. But no ill will against the kid or nothing like that. I'm just being honest. I don't think he had a great season, from what I saw. I had him going 8-4, 4-4, same as last year. They went 10-2, 6-2. So really good season. They made the playoffs. They lost in the first round, got smoked by Ohio State, but they made the playoffs nonetheless. I ain't gonna lie, I did predict Tennessee to win that game because defensively, I thought they would constrict Ohio State. Ohio State went out and bombed them. Bombs over Baghdad. It was just bad. B.O.B. It was bad. Tennessee could not do nothing offensively. I thought they would be able to run the ball against Ohio State too. I did think that, and it was bad, like I said. I had them beating Chattanooga. They won. I had them beating NC State. They won. Excuse me. I had them beating Kent State. They won. I had them losing to Oklahoma. They actually won 25-15. I had them beating Arkansas. They lost 19-14. I had them losing to Florida. They actually won 23-17 in overtime. I had them losing to Bama. They actually won 24-17. I had them beating Kentucky. They won. I had them beating Mississippi State. They won. I had them losing to Georgia. They lost. I had them beating UTEP. They won. I had them beating Vanderbilt, in which they won. So literally, it was like a 4-game stretch in the middle of the season where I just couldn't predict the games correctly. Got the first 3 right and the last 5 right. Got 8 games right, 4 games wrong. All in all, though, I'd say this is a really good season for Tennessee. 10 wins. You made the college football playoffs first playoffs bracket as a not an outright, as an at large. I think that's at large. I want to say that's at large when you're not. Yeah, because they weren't an auto bid. So yeah, they were at large. Made it as at large. You just ended up having to go against the national champion eventually in Ohio State, and they dog-walked you. But still a really good season for Tennessee, especially where they were like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think you would have predicted where they are this year. So shout out to them. We'll move on to Texas A&M, which another team who had quarterback issues. They Connor Weegan, he came back, I want to say against Mizzou, and absolutely dominated Mizzou. But then he fell back out of favor, and then it was back to Marcel Reed. And Marcel Reed, to me, is just a running quarterback with a strong arm. Ain't the greatest thrower of the football, in my opinion. I'm not a huge Marcel Reed fan. And I think quarterback play kind of disrupted a really good defense led by Nick Scorton, who came in from Purdue. But I think this was a really good season for Texas A&M, however. I had them going 9-3, 6-2. They went 8-4, 5-3. So I think this is a really good season. I predicted 11 games right, 1 game wrong. The only game I got wrong was the game against Auburn. They should not have lost that game. That's the only game I got wrong, and they could not stop Auburn on offense for whatever reason. I don't know. The defense went clubbing the night before, and just I don't know. They could not stop Auburn. Maybe it was the trenches. I have no idea. But that game went to 4 overtimes. The score was 43-41. It is what it is. That was the only game I got wrong. But let's get into it. So I had them losing to Notre Dame. They lost. That was a tough defensive battle. I had them beating McNeese. They won. I had them beating Florida. They won. I had them beating Bowling Green. They won. I had them beating Arkansas. They won. I had them beating Mizzou. They won. I had them beating Mississippi State. They won. Had them beating LSU. They won. I had them losing to South Carolina. They lost. Had them beating New Mexico State. They won. I had them beating Auburn, they lost. And then I had them losing to Texas, in which they lost, going 9-3, 6-2. I mean, excuse me, 8-4, 5-3. I had them going 9-3, 6-2. 11 games right, 1 game wrong, and they did lose the Vegas Bowl to USC 35-31. Shout out Teddy for winning a bowl game. But yeah, all in all, I think quarterback play kind of held him back. I did love the backfield trio they had of Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens. I can't remember which one of them got hurt. One of them eventually got hurt. They did have a nice tandem in the backfield. Now, we'll move on to I almost said Scott Satterfield. That is not his name. Why am I Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns, first year in the SEC. I had Texas going 12-0, 8-0. I'm not gonna lie. I had them winning every game. I had them beating Georgia. I did. Now Georgia front 4, front 7 dominated Texas, and that's why they won against Texas. But I had them winning every game. They lost 1 game, and that was the Georgia game. That's the only game they lost that season. With Texas bringing back Quinn Ewers, and they bringing in Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden's coming back, Gunnar Helm at tight end. They did lose Adonai Mitchell. They did lose J.C. Sanders. They did lose Xavier Worthy, but I thought they reloaded pretty well on offense. I can't figure out Jordan Whittington. I thought they reloaded pretty well, and then they had a good running back. Was it Jaden Blue? I think a running back. They ended up leaning on Contravion Wisner at running back, but hey, they had a really, really solid running back. I was thinking of Jonathan Brooks. I'm like, who am I thinking from Texas that kept turning? It's Jonathan Brooks. Yeah, so they had a really good class. They reloaded really well. And then they brought up my boy Trey Moore from UTSA. Really disappointed in the season he had. I thought he was going to go crazy at Texas. Kind of disappointed, but they reloaded on defense too. Andrew Mbaku, who went to the Eagles. Jahdae Barron, I think went to the Cardinals or the 49ers. I can't remember where Jahdae Barron went right at this moment. But yeah, they did a pretty good job reloading too. Anthony Hill Jr., Barron Sorrell, they reloaded pretty well. So I was really high on the Texas team, and they had a really good season. They made it all the way to the semifinals, where they lost to Ohio State, the eventual national championship winner. And Jack Sawyer had one of the biggest plays of his college football career in that game. But let's start. So they started with Colorado State. They won. I had them beating Michigan. They won. I had them beating UTSA. They won. I had them beating UL Monroe. They won. I had them going 12-0. So the only game I got wrong was the Georgia game. So I got 11 games right, 1 game wrong. They did lose the SEC championship game to Georgia, which is what I predicted. I predicted them to make it the SEC championship game, but lose to Georgia in a rematch. And then they beat Clemson, Arizona State in the college football playoffs before losing in the semis to Ohio State 28-14. All in all, it's a hell of a season for Texas. But it's a hell of a way to lose in the semis yet again. They lost in the semis to Washington the year before. Couldn't connect on a Quinn Ewers pass. So I think Adonai Mitchell, I want to say, at the end of the game. And they lose in the semis yet again. But still a great season. You stack 11-win seasons. You go 11-1 back-to-back years. Texas, they haven't been that good in a long time. I can't remember the last time they were even that good. Was it Sam Engler, I think? Oh, I can't remember who's the quarterback when they beat Notre Dame and got all that hype. I want to say it was Sam Engler, though. But I could be wrong. But, again, man, Texas looks to be back, finally. Looks to be like the 2000s. Now, how long can they stay back? We'll see. Arch Manning's coming up. I'm excited to see what Arch Manning looks like this year. They did lose Matt Golden, and they did lose Isaiah Bond. So, got to reload offensively at wide receiver, which I don't know what they're going to look like there, but I'm excited to see what they look like. They lost a lot, too. I think they lost Barron Sorrell. I think they lost Anthony Hill Jr. I think they lost Trey Moore. I know they lost Trey Moore, not to the draft, but I know they lost him. So, I'm excited. And they lost Gunnar Helm. So, they got a lot of reloading to do for Texas. But we're going to see. And lastly, we got to go with the team that I'm apologizing to. Now, as you know, I always do this in alphabetical order. So, I didn't save them last because I had to apologize. It's just alphabetical order. So, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's coming off a 2-10, 0-8 season. But they did get a saving grace this year. They got Diego Pavia from New Mexico State. Which, I don't know how or why I missed that. But looking back, no, I didn't miss it. I didn't. I have it right here. Yeah, they got Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers from New Mexico State. And those were huge heaven sents for Vanderbilt's football team. You pair that with Cedric Alexander in the backfield. Receiver corps was decent. You bring back Ricky Wright at safety. It was just a really good, really solid team. A really solid team. I think it's one of Vanderbilt's best teams in a really long time. Probably their best team since what, Derek Mason? Maybe they had another team as good, if not better. But yeah, I had them going 3-9, 0-8. They went 6-6, 3-5. So I think that's a good season for Vanderbilt. Come off seasons they didn't have. This is a really good season. You make a bowl game, you win a bowl game, so you really get 7 wins, 6 wins regular season with the bowl win under Kia Clark. So shout out to Vanderbilt. And you start off with a win against Virginia Tech, 34-27 in overtime, which I had them losing. Virginia Tech came in with a lot of hype. I had them beating Alcorn State. They won. I had them beating Georgia State. They actually lost this game 36-32, what made me mad, but they lost. They lost to Mizzou, which I had them losing. I had them losing to Bama. Upset. They won 40-35 in Bama. No, in Nashville, excuse me. Had them losing to Kentucky, which they won in Kentucky 20-13. Had them beating Ball State. They won. I had them losing to Texas. They lost. I had them losing to Auburn. They won 17-7 at Auburn. I had them losing to South Carolina. They lost. I had them losing to LSU. They lost. And I had them losing to Tennessee, in which they lost. Again, going 6-6, 3-5, beating Georgia Tech in the Birmingham Bowl 35-27 to secure a bowl win. All in all, hell of a season for Vanderbilt. You win a bowl game at Vandy. That's a great. Hey, you probably don't got to buy nothing at Vandy for the rest of the year. Diego Pavia is probably set for life at Vanderbilt. You come in and turn that program into a bowl-winning team. He's set for life. You don't got to. You're probably not paying for dinners, drink if he does drink, if he partakes. He's probably not paying for too much in Vanderbilt, car, anything. So, shout out, to Pavia and Vanderbilt. Now we're going to wrap up the SEC review. We're going to start with what I thought the standings would be in the SEC, and then what the actual standings were. So my standings were Texas at 1. 12-0, 8-0. Georgia at 2, 11-1, 7-1. Ole Miss at 3, 11-1, 7-1. Missouri at 4, 10-2, 6-2. Texas A&M at 5, 9-3, 6-2. Alabama at 6, 10-2, 6-2. I can't remember why that's like that, but anyway. Florida at 7, 7-5, 4-4. Tennessee at 8, 8-4, 4-4. LSU at 9, 8-4, 4-4. Oklahoma at 10, 7-5, 3-5. Auburn at 11, 7-5, 3-5. South Carolina at 12, 6-6, 3-5. Arkansas at 13, 4-8, 1-7. Kentucky at 14, 4-8, 1-7. Mississippi State at 15, 4-8, 0-8. And Vandy at 16, 3-9, 0-9. And that's only because of alphabetical order. The overall record didn't have nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with standings. But I had Mississippi State above Vandy only because of alphabetical order. I didn't know tiebreaker stuff like that. Now, the actual standings. Texas, 1, 11-1, 7-1. Georgia, 2, 10-2, 6-2. Tennessee, 3, 10-2, 6-2. Alabama at 4, 9-3, 5-3. LSU at 5, 8-4, 5-4. Oh, 5-3, excuse me. South Carolina at 6, 9-3, 5-3. Texas A&M at 7, 8-4, 5-3. Ole Miss at 8, 9-3, 5-3. Mizzou at 9, 9-3, 5-3. Florida at 10, 7-5, 4-4. Arkansas at 11, 6-6, 3-5. Vandy at 12, 6-6, 3-5. Oklahoma at 13, 6-6, 2-6. Auburn at 14, 5-7, 2-6. Kentucky at 15, 4-8, 1-7. And Mississippi State last at 2-10, 0-8. I'm gonna give myself half a point because I knew they would go winless in the SEC. I knew they would be at the bottom, so I'll give myself half a point. So 2.5 points for the standings. Next, again, like I said, the SEC championship game, I predicted that. I predicted Texas versus Georgia, with the winner being Georgia, and that's how it played out. Georgia winning 22-19 in overtime. Now, I did not get the SEC Offensive Player of the Year correctly. I voted for Jackson Dart preseason. It was Dylan Sampson. And the Defensive Player of the Year goes to not only the Cal Kennard of South Carolina on the edge. So shout out to him for winning SEC Defensive Player of the Year. And that is all we have for that's all I have, for the SEC review. Again, I will be going over the coaching carousel that I predicted, like the grades and stuff I predicted how they did in their first season on Sunday for the Power 4 conferences. So that's like Jeff Lebby of Mississippi State. Best you can guarantee what grade I give him. You can probably guess that. Probably not, maybe. Deshaun Foster of UCLA, Fran Brown of Syracuse, Kurt Signetti of Indiana. You probably can guess what grade I'm about to get him. Willie Fritz of Houston. So guys like that. I'm probably missing some others. Mike Elko of Texas A&M. I think Manny Diaz of Duke. Can I name any more first-year coaches last year in the Power 4? Sherrod Moore of Michigan. I think I might be. Alabama's Kalen DeBoer. Arizona's Jed Fish. Washington's, was it Brett Brennan? I want to say Brett Brennan was Washington. Oh, no. I think Jed Fish was Washington and Brett Brennan was Arizona. Excuse me. But yeah, you get the point. So I'll be back Sunday to talk about them. Next week, I'm going to go over my 10 teams to look out for and how they did. Then after that will be the group of 5. Coaching carousel, how they did. Then I got to talk about the new coaches that just got hired, and then we on to these previews. So look out, man. Content is coming at a rapid rate. The season's almost here. The season starts in like a year. I said a year. In a month and a couple of weeks. So I say about 6 to 7 weeks. We will have week 0 upon us. Can't wait for that. Y'all enjoy y'all 4th of July. I'm not gonna hold y'all up any longer. And I'm gone. Peace.
Thank you for staying to the end. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe, and also hit that notification button so you can be notified next time we put out a video. If you're listening on any podcast platform, subscribe and hit that notification button, y'all, so you can be notified we put out another podcast audio. And last but not least, hit that share button. No matter what you're listening to or watching it, hit that share button and send it to somebody that you know that would love to watch this episode you just listened to. So once again, thank you for staying to the end, and we'll see y'all in the next episode.